It occurred to me that you captained South Africa probably at the hardest time over the last 30 years.
It's a very accurate assessment, to be honest. Nelson Mandela was luckily in that same era. So I had the real privilege of spending time with him, getting phone calls from him, chatting about how sport has the ability to change the country.
You were not a huge guy, and that's why you needed to be aggressive, It's unbelievable hearing that.
25 to 28,000 people at one school game. Number one against number two in South Africa. It was phenomenal. You put your hand over his head, and then you put the neck between your two fingers. And then what you do is you're throwing up in the air, and then you shoot. One of the lessons I learned was you must never want something so bad that you're prepared to sacrifice your morals and your ethics for it.
Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode on the Lessons from the Game podcast. Today we sit down with one of the most courageous leaders in South African rugby. Corné Krige captained the Springboks during one of their most difficult periods on the field and in the changing room. But this story isn't just about rugby. It's about pain, redemption, business, belief, and becoming more than just a jersey. We cover it all from Twickenham to Campsdale, business to purpose-driven legacy. Let's get stuck into it. Corné, how are you doing? Great to have you.
Yeah, I'd love it to be on your podcast. Thanks very much.
Now, really looking forward to this. Ben, how are you doing, my man?
Yeah, good, thanks, G. Yeah, likewise. I'm excited to have Corné on. It's going to be a good one.
All right, Corné, thanks for joining us. We're really looking forward to this. And firstly, for me, it's a huge honor, fellow boys eye, and you were definitely one of my role models when I was at school. So thanks for taking the time. And this is a massive privilege for me to be speaking with you. But Corné, we always start off this podcast. What is the one lesson from the game that you have learned that you can share with our young rugby players and aspiring coaches?
Yeah, it's a great question because there are so many lessons. And for me, possibly the one that stands out is that the discipline to do the right thing at the right time when nobody's watching. And when you don't really want to do it, and something that I use in my life every day, get that discipline of getting up early in the morning, going to the gym when it's dark and cold and rainy, that I got from rugby, and that's the one thing that, like you were in the same school as I was in, the Paul Boys Eye, and it started there really. Discipline started at school, but also in professional rugby. If you don't have any discipline, probably won't make it.
Today's Lessons from the Game episode was possible thanks to the support of Harris Begley Financial Planning, headed up by former Blackheath player Matt Begley. They are the experts to speak to for tailored advice on investments, mortgages, insurance, and pensions, helping you plan for a future of financial security. So when you think money, think Harris Begley and head to www.harrisbegley.co.uk. Approver Quilter Financial Services Limited and Quilter Mortgage Planning Limited, March 2025.
I'd love to get into the school stuff and the foundation of that, Corné. But when I was just reflecting on what I've read about you and your career and what we know about you from the outside, it occurred to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love to get your assessment on this and see if this is an accurate assessment. But it occurred to me that you captained South Africa probably at the hardest time over the last 30 years. Do you think that's like a fair assessment, or do you think that's maybe inaccurate?
It's a very accurate assessment, to be honest.
Is it?
It was in a transitional period. Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1994. I matriculated in 1993. So the year after I matriculated, I went to study a business management course, and I was chosen for an South African under 19, under 20 team, and we went to a Junior World Cup. And what happened was the old national anthem of South Africa had been banned. It was called the Stem. And so we went there, and they were still working on Nkosi Sikeleli. And we went there without an anthem. So when everybody was singing their national anthems, we had a minute silence. It was a very interesting time. And one of the first, let's call it what it is, a quota player, was on that tour, and it was very difficult to manage. It was just an incredible time to be part of it. To stand there and for a minute silence and then run onto the field and still win. We were actually won that Junior World Cup because New Zealand wasn't there, but all the other teams were there. But New Zealand, I didn't know why they didn't take part in it, but it was in France, and we managed to win. So it was there already. That's where my journey as a captain of let's call it well disputed teams started.
It's and then sort of fast forward in that period of 2002, 2003. I mean, you were right at the forefront then of making those changes and instrumental to a change in, I guess, mentality. And that was the thing that stood out for me is your strong leadership and this mental fortitude throughout that time.
Yeah, there was no other option to be honest. It was a time of really where leadership was massive, and one of the greatest leaders of I think of all time, Nelson Mandela was luckily in that same era. So I had the real privilege of spending time with him, getting phone calls from him, chatting about changing the country and how sport has the ability to change the country. And if you look in that corner there's a photo
see the photo.
My family with him. So there were all these tough things, but there were the really nice things as well. Spending time with the greatest leader of all time was really special.
Incredible.
Corné, I remember that period back in the day, when you were captain, and it's not easy being a captain of South Africa. And, you still got to focus on your performances as well. And you're all, as a rugby player, and I think it's especially for the younger generation, if you want to get a great example of what aggression means, just go check out some of the highlights. I still remember back in the day at Newlands when I was still a Western Province supporter, which I'm clearly not today anymore. Let's just be clear about that. And my dad used to drop me off at the games, and I would be in the standing seats watching. And I still remember put on this massive heat playing for Western Province, and it was always unbelievable to see. But leadership, with that, it's not, I believe some people are maybe born with it naturally, but it's something that can also be developed over time. But what was your tools that you had available back then? Because you were a brilliant captain, Corné. And when you spoke to players, though you could see they would listen, and when you would come to the school as well, speak to us as young students, aspiring rugby players, you really connected with us. But what would you say was the key for you back then, why you were such a successful captain? When I'm talking about success, we're not talking about results. We're talking about the person you were and the path that you laid for the players that followed you.
I think there are a few answers to that question. My journey started when I went to Paul Boys High. I went to Paul Boys Primary first at the age of 3, at the age of 4. My parents were still in Zambia, so they were 3,500 kilometers away. So I stayed with people for a while, and then when I went to high school, I went to boarding school. But I turned 5 in my grade 1 year, so which means I was 2 years too young for my grade.
Oh.
I was held back. 2 years later, I was held back, and then I held myself back in grade 11. So I spent a lot of time with Paul Boys and Paul Boys Primary. But I think that not having parents to guide me or parents that could protect me. I was always the one who I had to look after myself in a way. And I think that teaches you to be independent, but also to lead, because sometimes if you want to create your own environment, you have to lead people into that environment. And I forgot his name now, but the guy who picked me as a captain when I was, to be brutally honest, a naughty little shit. I really was. I was the ADHD kid who could not sit still. I was all over the place. And this guy had the vision to go, let's try and give this guy a bit of responsibility, and maybe let's see what happens. And that was under 13. I became the captain of the under 13 Cradle League team. And since then, I never played in a team that I didn't captain. It was just one of those things that once he gave me responsibility, I took it so seriously, and I really developed as a leader over time. But again, it comes back to that discipline. If you want to be a leader, you need to set the example on the field, off the field. When you at training, you have to show the way. You have to run in front. You have to be the fittest guy in the field. I wasn't the biggest, and that's why I needed to be so aggressive, as you alluded to earlier. I played my first professional game at 87 kilograms. I played for Western Province, my first game. 87. My son is under 16. He's 78, and he says to me, "Dad, I need to weigh 85." And I said, "No, wait, relax. There's lots of time." But because I wasn't a huge guy, I really had to play on the edge of very aggressive, and also sometimes stepped over that line, which I'm not proud of, but it was just the way I needed to play.
Corné, you just say there, and when you say it, you were not a huge guy, and that's why you needed to be aggressive. It's unbelievable hearing that. So, and I think we always talk about it with Ben. Like each rugby player needs to find his own unique path in the game. Playing towards his strength. But I think what really intrigues me is that you were not maybe the biggest player, but where did that aggression come from? Is it the fact that, and I think maybe also before you answer that question, giving people insights what it means to be in a boarding school? Because I don't think, if you look at a lot of the youngsters today, they get everything on a platter. I'm talking about guys that go through the academy system. They get their meals given. Everything's done for them. They get their planning set. It's like they're really living a life of luxury. Mm-hmm. But I think maybe firstly, give maybe people some insights to your experience in boarding school. And then secondly, what fueled that aggression? Like seeing that you were not the biggest rugby player. Like, a lot of players would be smaller rugby, but scared. They would try and avoid contact, but you were actually looking for contact.
Yeah, boarding school definitely made a difference. It also makes you tough. Nobody to complain to, nobody that you can say, look, the food's not great today. But you just eat. You eat because that's all there is. There's no other option. And even now, my kids moan. They say, "Dad, can I have Uber Eats because the food's not great today?" It's tough enough. Just take it on the chin. Yeah. And so boarding school really, part of that, being away from home, seeing my parents every 6 months, all that, molded me into a relatively tough individual, emotionally tough, but also physically. I always trained really hard from school days. I always wanted to be the fittest, and so that aggression. Part of that aggression is my hate of losing. I really hate losing till today. I play table tennis against my wife and she beats me. I'm pissed off for the whole day. But it's still, and that's something that I hope I haven't passed on to my kids. But because you've got to be a good winner and a good loser, part of the three pillars in Paul Wizar is good sportsmanship, and we saw that this weekend with the unbelievable kind of great sportsmanship. So yeah, as I said, my aggression was always on the edge, and I often stepped over the line.
It's actually a bit. I went to boarding school when I just turned 11, so my parents moved to Dubai, and then I got sent back from Dubai to London. I don't know if I've ever told you, G, or whatever you. So this is actually, it's almost like a bit like therapy stroke listening to. yeah, it's quite funny. But actually also it's a really good one for young players because they get fixated on the weight. When you're coaching in academies and with young players now, they get fixated on hypertrophy, muscle mass, and they sometimes forget what they're good at. So it's really interesting point you make about being only 87 kilos. And I saw this thing the other day, and it was Quacker Smith. It was the Curry Cup final, and his first Curry Cup final with the Lions, and he was going through the team lists, and he was 89 kilos or 87 kilos as well. So it's just it's actually a really interesting point. Corné, from so that period there, like, how did you transition into professional rugby? Because was it straight to the Stormers from there, and then straight into the Springboks?
No.
Was it plain sailing for you?
No, it wasn't. And I made a crucial mistake that could have cost me my professional career. So, in Cape Town, there's only one place to study if you want to play rugby. It's Stellenbosch University. And Marties, as they call it. So I got a bursary at Marties, and I decided, no, there's no ways I'm going to Marties. Everybody who goes from Paul goes to Stellenbosch. And I thought, no, stuff that, I'm going somewhere else. So I decided to go to the Cape Technikon in the middle of the city. I needed to see the big lights. I come from Zambia. There's not a lot of big lights there. So I went to Cape Technikon, and to be honest, it could have been a disastrous decision. But we had we had a great intake that year, and we had a phenomenal team. And we beat Marties twice that year, our under 21s. And we had 8 Cape Technikon players in the Western Province team. So I had the responsibility of driving the bus to Stellenbosch to go for training sessions, So through Technikon, I played a bit of club rugby, and then got seen from one of the bigger clubs, went to another club. I'll never forget, they paid me 1,000 rand a game.
Wow.
If I played. And, it was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money back then.
And if I played 4 games, I had 4,000 rand.
Jeez.
And I want to tell you, I didn't save a single cent because nobody guarded me. And I was like, meet it all up. Let's have a good go after the games. And then from there into the Western Province team. And then when rugby turned professional in 1996, I got my first contract. So we had 1996, we had a ridiculous under 21 team. To name a few names, Percy Montgomery, there's just so many. There were 8 Springboks in that team in the end.
Oh.
But just we cleaned up the whole. From there, that year we cleaned up. I mean, everybody. Our closest win was against PE actually. When we played them, we underestimated them, and I think we beat them by 7 or 10 points. The rest we just annihilated all of them. We had a phenomenal team. And from there, obviously, Western Province, Stormers, and then into the Springboks.
Corné, I think it's very important we need to take time and acknowledge this. Paul Boisai won this weekend, inter-schools. That was massive.
No.
And, living in France, I regret that I couldn't be able to attend. But I think maybe, to give people insights, we talk a lot about South African rugby. We talk about, how strong South African rugby is. And you mentioned it early, the discipline we were taught at school. We came from the same school. I attended Paul Boys Primary, Paul Boys High as well. And now, our three traditions: good scholarship, sportsmanship, good conduct. That's something I still live by. And, I still stand up when an adult walks into the room. That's still important. Sure. Not wearing a blazer anymore, but if I do wear one, I always make sure it's buttoned up. But, those values, I think it's very important. And I'm very grateful to have had that experience at Paul Boys High. And we saw this weekend, 25,000 people, going to a schoolboy game, and you are still in the front. So I can see you're still very active with the school, helping where you can. So thank you for that. Thank you for all your contributions. But if you can maybe give insights to our audience, in terms of, the level of schoolboy rugby in South Africa and what role that is now currently playing in the success of South African rugby in general.
I can't estimate it enough how important it is to Rassie and his team, because they currently, guys are going 1 year out of school, they're into the under 20 South African team, and from there they're already heading towards Springbok practices, and they're actually doing so. They're already the names already in the line, So to go to that game on Saturday, 25, it could have been more, 25 to 28,000 people at one school game, number one against number two in South Africa. It was phenomenal. The pressure on those kids was enormous, and people, I'm on two sides there. Sometimes I think the pressure on the kids is a little bit too much, to be honest, Cutthroat. But the guys that are going to make it, they've already tasted pressure. And I'll never forget when I was in matric in 1993, I walked out of the changing rooms into this cauldron of adrenaline, and I couldn't feel my hands. My hands were numb, totally numb. And I don't think I was that nervous in my first test match even. Maybe it's because we played Italy at the time. They weren't that good. But I really wasn't that nervous because you're still young. You're still developing as a kid, and you're 17, 18 years old. But the pressure is enormous. And for some people, it's really good, but it can also break some people. But if you can handle that pressure at that young age, and you can slot kicks like the guy, like Ivan Jordan did, our number 12 over the weekend, and you win your lineouts, everything's under pressure. The hookers are under pressure, the flyers are under pressure, the kickers are under pressure, and if you can handle that, your pathway to the Springboks is not going to be that long.
But Corné, I'm on two occasions I spent time with the first team at Paul Boys High. I did some scrum coaching, and I even recently coached the under 19 E team with my former coach Richard Fasagi. So that was quite cool. I still remember. Normally, I'm used to getting about 20 or 30 minutes, when working with the younger teams, and that at an hour session, and I was done after 30. So I'm like, sir, I'm done. He's like, nah, the boys are enjoying it. Just go on for another 30. So that was good. But talking about that pressure, I do believe that played an integral part of my career in terms of experiencing that high pressure game. There were stages overwhelmed, and a lot of people that are watching or listening to this podcast, it's a build up. It's in the week. Yeah, you got the whole school practicing their songs, their sing songs as we call it. You got what we call a big brag. It was on the Thursday night, and stuff like it's massive. So all that pressure, and also the capping ceremony, all of that is special. And small things like you run onto the field, you see a painting of yourself, a face or your face on the field. We actually still have it back at home in Paul at my parents' house. And that definitely helps you. But I think, Corné, what we're seeing today is that the schoolboy rugby in South Africa, they're not coached by amateurs. if we can put it that way. Because what we are seeing, the quality of rugby that is being played, I saw the game on the weekend, it's unbelievable. The quality of play, the phase play, the execution. It's not like you're looking at a schoolboy team. And that's the thing where it's actually astonishing, is that the amount of effort schools are putting in behind the scenes.
And money, to be honest. We appointed a director of rugby at the beginning of this year, Neil de Bruin, Sways de Bruin's son, so we were hoping we would get both. And we did get a bit of the IP from the dad, but, Neil has been phenomenal, and in the old days, in our days, Richard Fisage was our coach, and he was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But you can't do that anymore. The top teams are coached by professional people. They have a physio, they have a team doctor, they have a manager, which we never had. I mean, we had one manager maybe looked after the kit and made sure we had balls for training, but that was about it. So it really has changed, Gurthro, and it's I think it's part of the bigger success of South African rugby.
It's an incredible pathway, isn't it? You can just see it going from strength to strength, and it seems to be just broadening across a lot of other schools as well. Schools that you didn't, when I was in Pretoria visiting last year, and I went to Menlo Park and visited there, and we actually, because of the president's inauguration, we can train at Loftus. So then we were training at Pretoria Boys High, which obviously is incredible, and then Affy's across the road. But it seems to be, when you've got this pathway for the Springboks down the line, it seems to be that it's looking in good health for the future.
For sure.
It's incredible.
Corné, I just want to switch things up a little bit. There's a lot of great stories that we can tell, and I think you talk about discipline, but one of the things we always talk about also on this podcast is humility. And I'll never forget, and I mentioned this when we jumped on the call, you came to speak to our to the school. I think it was in 1999, if I'm not mistaken. And I was selected for the SA under 19 squad. I was training back then at the Sports Science Institute. And you were actually training there with the box, and you came out all the way, and I was still there on that square. I think we just finished the bleep test, and you just came out and you came to say hi. You potentially might have not known my name, but you came out, you recognized me, a fellow Paul boys. And I just want to say, that meant the world to me, and that fueled me. And that also taught me that if one day I'm in that position where I'm this professional rugby player playing for the Springboks, you still need to keep your feet on the ground. That having that humility, that's important. And I think that is key. And that's something that we grew up with in Paul.
Yep. Humility, and it's in all spheres of life. I always say to the kids now, the professional guys who are just starting their careers, I say, you must never attach who you are as a person to the title that you get. And it's no different in business. If I attached who I was as a person to the Springbok captain, I would have been Corné Krige, the Springbok captain. But what happens when that falls away? One injury, I'm out. The next day, I'm just Corné Krige, who nobody knows who he is. So I always made sure that I stayed in contact with all my school friends, that I stayed in contact with all my Cape Technicon friends. And I turned 50 this year, and it was so nice to have all my Technicon friends around, and then have all my school friends around, because those are the guys who knew you from the beginning. Those are the guys who helped form you. Those are the guys' parents who looked after me when my parents were in Zambia. So yeah, being humble and is just one of the most important things in any spheres of life, business, sports. But sport especially, because sport will humble you if you're not humble.
Corné, when there's obviously some highlights throughout your playing career, and you've moved on now, and you transitioned after the game. When you reflect on your playing career, what were the toughest moments for you? And I'd love to know if they revealed your character that was already there and your leadership and everything like that, or if actually they developed it even further than you thought possible at the time?
You know, then it's a difficult one because it unearthed a bit more of me than it maybe should have. So my competitiveness probably brought out some bad things within me. So yes, it made me it put my level as a captain on like one step up, but also at times, you know, the pressure and the fact that we were losing and that there were lots of outside factors caused me to do things that I'm not 100% proud of, you know. So my kids bring those videos to me and say, "Dad, what the hell happened here?" And I'm like, you know, it's a long day. How long have you got to listen? Because it's a big thing to explain the amount of pressure that's on us, because the Springboks never lose. Like we were a few years after 1995, you know. So in 2003, yeah, so 1995 was the World Cup that we won. The next one we won was in 2007. So in between there was 99 and 2003 was 99. I think we lost in the semi-final. So we lost in the quarterfinal against a really brilliant All Black team in 2003. And, you know, I said to the guys the other day when they were showing the Springboks arriving at Owa Tambo, the thousands and thousands of people there, and that people were like crawling over each other to see the Springboks. And I said, that's quite weird, you know, because when we flew back after the quarterfinal loss against New Zealand, there was nobody at the airport. Yeah. But I think it unearthed some great stuff within me, but also some stuff that I'm not that proud of, to be honest.
Do you feel you really grown from that time though? Are you sort of, when you reflect on it, are you glad almost that you went through that to become a better person and more resilient as well? Or is it something you would have rather just have...
I don't think you have to go through all that hell to become a good person.
Yeah, maybe not that extreme.
It did teach me a lot of things, and it did. One of the most important things out of that was, because I was, before come Staldrat, I was told that if I didn't finish this camp, I will not go to the World Cup. And I knew in my heart I was not going to make 2007 because I retired in 2005 because of injuries. But I knew the way I was playing, the size of my body, I knew I wasn't going to make 2007. So it was relatively important. It's like the Olympics for an athlete, you know, to go to the World Cup. So it was really important for me. But what we went through at Camp Staldrat was like, I blamed myself for the fact that I didn't take my players and say, listen, we're out. If none of us can go to the World Cup, try and pick another team and take them to the World Cup, you know. But when you're in it, it's hard to make those decisions. And I did try once, and a couple of gunshots went off around our heads. So we went back into the water. But this is as one of the lessons I learned was you must never want something so badly that you prepared to sacrifice your morals and your ethics for that. And
that's brilliant.
In my business today, you know, I always want the good deals and the best deals, but I'm not prepared to sacrifice, you know. And it's
you're not going to compromise on your.
Sometimes counts against me, but it is what it is. But that's one of the lessons a lot of people don't learn in their life.
Sorry, Gia, just, you know, one of the things that really stood out for me in that time, Corné, because I was in South Africa at the time, but it seemed, and what I really admired from the outside was you sort of had to present a united front as the captain, but it seemed like that was a real compromise internally for you, so that you had to, you know, you were representing these guys, but you had to present a united front. And I don't know. I've failed in that area many times where you've got it's so difficult when you don't agree with somebody who's in leadership or next to you. Sometimes it's a very challenging. I thought it was incredible, and that must have been so tough for you in that period.
I think Russ is doing that quite well now. He's kept the politicians out. He said, "Tell me what you want. I'll give that to you, but then you leave me alone. And he's taken that massive big white elephant out of the room. So yeah, it was tough because like you said, we needed to do look like everything was okay and that we were a united front, but there were disagreements, and there were politicians saying, but this guy must play and that guy must play, and you were just trying to, and for the team, because remember when there's interference from the top, it comes to the coach and the manager and the captain, and to not filter that information down was also difficult. So I had to be at this level, be very cautious, and then when the players, I need to make as if everything was fine, because it wasn't fine. It was quite tough.
Yeah.
Corné, just a little funny anecdote. Years ago, I'm talking probably about now, 6 years ago, on a previous podcast, I had Big Joe on the pod, Joe Finnikerk, and he was telling me the story of Kamp Staldrot, that obviously you guys needed to eat, and the only way you guys could eat was if you had to kill a chicken. And apparently, him not growing up on a farm, he had no idea how to kill a chicken. So, so were you actually there? Can you tell us the story of Joe?
No, it's mad because we had a tug of war for this chicken, right? And my team won, and Joe was in my team. And I said to Joe, do you know how to kill a chicken? Because I obviously picked him because I knew he was a stadsjob. He's like a city slicker.
Yeah.
And says I felt sorry for him. I said, Joe, so the way you kill the chicken is you put your hand over his head, and then you put the neck between your two fingers. And then what you do is you're throwing up in the air, and then you really shake him down, and then his head actually comes off his neck. Anyway, he didn't do it right. So the first time we went, it didn't come. The second time the head didn't come off. The third time we just smashed the chicken on the floor, and obviously the thing died. But we couldn't eat that chicken because we were so hungry. But you couldn't eat that. That chicken, you could not eat that chicken. The thing died of trauma. Anyway, poor Joe. I felt so sorry for him. But yeah, the greenies won't like that story. But it is what it is. But Joe did well. Joe managed to get through that camp quite easily.
Corné, you answered actually our question earlier. I wanted to ask because you actually retired at a very young age compared to a lot of rugby players today. You see guys are still pushing. If you look at Dion Fourie, I think at the age of 37 or something like, he made his debut for the Boks.
Brock Harris, 40
guys are going on. So how did you experience that time? Was it due to injury, like you just mentioned, or was it just a lifestyle choice that you made? You wanted to focus on life after rugby?
Yeah, so I went to play in Northampton, which wasn't an easy thing to go and play in England 2 years after we had the Battle of Twickenham. The guy in the local newspaper wrote that if Northampton Saints can contract Corné Krige, they might as well contract Osama bin Laden and Freddy Krueger with him in the loose trio. So I've been compared to Osama bin Laden in the newspapers before, but it was tough. It was a tough 2 years. One because of the weather. One because Alan Solomons made me captain, and I begged him not to make me captain. I didn't have to be captain. I've been captain of all the teams, and he was a South African coach who said, "No, I want you." So it didn't go down well because there were English players in that team who had won a World Cup. So Paul Grayson, Steve Thompson, Ben Ward, I think. Ben was Ben
Cohen.
Anyway. Ben Cohen, that's what. So yeah, it was a tough one. It really was tough, and I hurt my neck in my second season, and I ran into a ruck, and a guy hit me on my shoulder before I could brace. So before I got to the ruck, so he hit me on my shoulder and on my neck, and I just had this like as if fire was going down my arm, and I was screaming of pain. Anyway, they got me in the car and took me to a neurologist, and they had scans done, and he had a look at my neck, and he said to me, "So, Corné, how long do you still want to play?" So I said to him, "If your neck looked like that, how long would you play?" He said, "I'd stop immediately." So this had obviously moved, and in my mind, even when I started playing Gurthro, I was like, I think if I haven't achieved, because I started early, I was like 20. I said, well, if in 10 years is a long time. The way I play, if I haven't achieved anything at 30, I might as well just give it up anyway. So I'd achieved. I mean, I'd become Springbok and go and play overseas for 2 years, and I stopped. I stopped at the end of that season. I actually finished the season, skipped 2 games because of my neck, and then finished the season, and then decided to come home. My daughter was born in Northampton, and I wasn't prepared to stay 5 years to get her English residency. So, yeah, we came back in 2005, and that was it. Packed up and started working.
So Corné, how did you find that transition period? Because today you're running a business, you're successful in business as well. And, as a rugby player, it can be tough, that transition, especially experiencing the highs that you did. So how was that period when you started working, what did you experience back then?
One, anger. I was angry of the game. I didn't watch any rugby. I refused to watch any rugby. It took me about a year to get over myself and stop watching rugby again. I was quite angry at what had happened in the past, but I worked through those things, and I think no doubt it was the most difficult time of my life. Those 3 years after rugby, it was very tough, because you got 0 to 0. Your bank account goes from a decent looking bank account to 0. And then you start earning money, and then through your business, but it's tough, And you're not always doing what you really like. You're not getting any adrenaline on a weekend. There's no playing, there's no singing anthems, there's no nothing. But, with a solid wife and a solid foundation of discipline, I took a month off after rugby. I took a month off, didn't train for a month, didn't do anything for a month, just looked after my daughter, and then started working and started training at 5 in the morning. Got up at 5 in the morning, started training at 5:30, and I'm still in that routine. It's the toughest was that first 3 years of not earning money and going from 0 to 0. And if I attached who I was as a rugby player to my name, to who I was as a person, I would have been lost, in a big way. And I'm just grateful that, I had good friends, a very strong wife who always kept me grounded. And but it was incredibly tough. Probably the toughest thing I've ever done.
Corné, it seems like, if it was a transition that was quite tough for you and it took 3 years, and you're humble and you stay connected with your school friends, your Technicon friends, there's a lot of people, a lot of players at the moment who are not yet transitioning. What advice have you got for them as they near their end of the careers, or even mid-career? Can you give any advice around that?
I think one, get something else to do. Start investing in something that you can do part-time, that you can start removing yourself in a small way from the game. And then the most important thing is obviously not attaching your success as a rugby player to you as a person, because that's a temporary. Corné Krige, the Springbok captain, was a temporary title that I had, and I knew it was only temporary. I knew it could be taken away from me from any day. And I was only captain for 18 games. I played 39 cats. I probably could have played a lot more if I didn't have so many injuries. But the fact of the matter is, if you attach who you are as a person to what you have, your title at that time, you're going to struggle even more after, right? So, yeah, I think those were the things that really pulled me through in the end.
Yeah, that's. Gee, we come across so many people struggling with that, don't you? It's that identity, that routine. You know, obviously all those things that we see it quite often, don't we? Hear about it often.
Yeah, and I definitely resonate with what Corné is saying. Like even myself back then, when I transitioned, I would get up early in the morning as well, get up at 5. And even now recently, when I was in South Africa with my brother, we would get up at 4 in the morning. At 4:30, would be in the gym, and he'll be going off to work. But there was a reason behind it, because I wanted to avoid traffic, because I spent 2 days with the box. But I kind of still try to maintain that routine. I still get up. I think for something I've kept with me over the last few years, getting up at 5, doing my routine, getting my day ready, what I want to achieve on the day. And we don't have the same outcomes. You know, you're definitely way further than me, Corné, right? But I'm enjoying too much the charcuterie and all the pastries and plants. But I am training. I'm training. I still train at least 6 times a week. That's important for me. That keeps me grounded. And it keeps, like you mentioned earlier, just before, it keeps me sane as well. So I think definitely to all the former athletes or former rugby players listening, all the guys, just keep that training regime. That's so important. It's not about aesthetics or anything like that. It's just taking care of yourself. So Corné, I know you need to jump, and before I hand it over to Ben, as 1 or 2 quick fire questions for you. You know, just maybe if you can give us a brief update. What are you doing today? I know you've moved on to some greener pastures. You've evolved also as a human being. What is Corné Krige doing today?
So actually, I'm still doing what I did when I left rugby. I started a outdoor advertising business with another partner. That partnership didn't really last. Well, it lasted 2 years, but it didn't end well. So now I'm on my own in a business. So one is advertising business, and then on the other side I've got a branding business, which basically does branding collateral. So we make any clothing, aprons, lanyards, anything branded, we make it. And it's quite a nice business, because you meet a lot of people. Everybody needs stuff that's branded for they need their company clothing branded, but they don't know what to give gifts. They don't know what to give to people. They're one of their biggest clients, so we help them with that. It's quite a cool, and I like the creativity around it. And then the advertising business is still there. We've been very blessed over the last few years. It's gone really well. This year has been a tough year, but our family is healthy. And I think when you're in business, you learn that your happiness mustn't come from how well it's going at work. You must find your happiness somewhere else.
Okay.
Corné, there's a couple of things I'd love to know, just as we wrap up. We've spoken loads about resilience and leadership and all those things, going to boarding school at such a young age and all these, the tough time that you had as a Springbok. How much of that do you use in your walk now in the corporate space? Do you reference those things you've learned, or is it actually about the culture, the environment, the people around you? How do how much of that do you use?
And also, like, I've got a team here in my office in Century City, and I often use things that I learned in rugby for them. About a couple of months ago, 2 of my staff members had a bit of beef with each other, and I sat them around the boardroom table and I said, look, what you realize in rugby is that you don't have to be friends with everybody. Because everybody thinks, in a rugby team, Gurthro, you'll know this. In a rugby team, everybody, all 23 or 30 in the squad, they're all great friends. It's not true. You're friends with about 10 of them. Very good friends, because you like-minded people. But there's a lot of other guys who are all very different. But you respect the person for what they can bring to the party. You respect the person for what they can bring to the job. So if in this environment that I'm now, you can't work in silos. You're working together. So I'm doing the first bit of the job. I'm handing that to the next guy, and that guy's handing it to the next guy, and then the fourth guy is going to finish the job, right? But if anybody in the middle makes a mess up, then there's a ripple effect to everybody. So just respect the guy, because I can't scrum like Gurthro can, but Gurthro can't get to the wings to tackle them when there's nobody else to tackle them. So we would respect each other for what we could bring to the team, and that's what I use. I use a lot of those examples, and as I said, that discipline. Well, I'd actually talk to my son today. It's like, oh, Dad, I don't want to go to school. I'm tired. I said, in life one day you're going to be tired. You're going to have a late night on a Wednesday night, and the last thing you want to do is go to work on a Thursday. But it is what it is. Get up, dress up, show up, and make sure you're at work. So I'm teaching all these lessons, but sometimes it's hard to practice myself.
It's like all of us. It's so good, Corné. So thank you for your time. I've got so many more questions, but it's so it's really good to hear you talking about your lessons. Yeah. Gee, were you going to ask something, or can I carry on?
He's giving you that opportunity. We'll give it to Ben GPT.
No. You know what? How's your body nowadays? You put your body on the line. Everybody knows that we've spoken about having to retire early. The way you played. How is your body nowadays? And what do you think of the modern game? Can you watch it? Do you watch it? Do you enjoy it? What do you think about it?
My body's doing quite well for the injuries that I had. Put it that way. The one thing I really do struggle with is my neck, which kept me awake for about a year. And I did all the scans, and everybody said no operation yet, which is good. So I'm basically taking like a small painkiller every evening. It helps me sleep well, and it's not an addictive thing. So I hate tablets. I hate anything that I have to drink, any tablets, any other stuff. I hate it. So I'm lucky that I can drink one little tablet at night and I can sleep, because when you get older, sleep becomes a big thing.
Yeah.
So but my body is in general, for the injuries that I had and the way I played, I've come off quite lightly, put it that way. Yeah.
And when you look at the modern game, do you enjoy watching it, or what's your thoughts?
I love watching rugby now. I'm a big Bellboys Eye, Western Province, Stormers, and Springbok supporter, and I watch all the games that I possibly can. But I also love watching them a second time, because I look at the things differently. And my son also plays flank, so I said to him, "What did you see there? What are you seeing there?" And then I pause and I rewind, and he says, I don't see what you're seeing there. I said, "Now that's how you jackal for a ball," because I was one of the first open side flankers in South Africa, because we always played open side, and we played the same side, no matter which side you were. Yeah. You were a 6 and a 7, but you never changed. I asked, I said, "I'm small, I can get to the ball very quickly. Put me on the open side, so I could jackal the ball, and so I like that side of the game. I love the game. What I don't like about the game is that the TMOs get involved too often, and accidental rugby clashes should never be a yellow card. And that I really dislike that, because when you're going for a normal tackle and a guy sidesteps you and your head collides with his head, it's not your fault. You weren't deliberate in the way the intention, I think, must be always looked at. Even when you go up into the air, if everybody's going for the ball in the air, if one guy bumps the other guy, yellow card, it changes the whole game. My kids bring some of the videos to me of our tackles, the tip tackles we could do. I mean, it was a great tackle in our days. The commentators would go, "What a great tackle."
I think I remember one of them. Gee, you must have seen it. I think, was it Corné? Was it against Wales? Do you remember that one against Wales?
Yeah.
I think it was you, wasn't it? And then, yeah, like everybody's like upside down, and yeah, I remember. Yeah,
no, there would be 2 yellow cards and a red card in that one row.
Yeah, it was Robbie Fleck.
We South Africa, and we got the penalty.
Yeah.
Now, so it's one thing I don't like about the game, but I really enjoy watching it.
No, it's great to watch, and we always make fun. We still have our WhatsApp groups going, Corné, with the Bulls in the box, on those golden eras, and we constantly, guys, Monty sometimes will send a clip as well, and he would say to Bucky's, that was a red card.
Yeah.
So it was good. But Corné, I really appreciate you taking time. We can chat forever and ever. And, I just want to say, always looked up to you, still do, for everything that you're doing off the field still today. And I do want to give a special mention to yourself and also to everyone in the Boys Eye family, for everybody that's working hard behind the scenes, the teachers, the students, even the staff. People are keeping those rugby fields in shape and cleaning up after us. Every single person that plays a part in Boys Eye success, I can tell you guys this, that all of you play a massive role in our lives, and that's ingrained in us, is part of who we are. So we make sure to all the younger generation that Boys Eye keep that going. But just coming back to sportsmanship, what I did enjoy, and I saw photos of social media. We all know what it feels like winning and losing at inter-schools, and seeing a Boys Eye Comfort Bowl gymnasium player, that's massive. That's what the game is about, and we just need to make sure.
I get goosebumps when I watch that, when I look at that photo, because the emotion in there is just for one of the bad brothers to just grab that guy and just say, I feel for you, because I was there last year. This is how we felt last year. So it's very emotional, and it's an awesome day to be part of.
All right. Thank you, Corné. Ben, thanks for your time as well. And to everybody listening, please, if you are in South Africa, reach out to Corné as well, because he does a lot of corporate speaking as well, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to build leadership, definitely needs to reach out to you. So please reach out to Corné. We will add, I do believe you have a website, Corné, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll add it to the show notes. And to everybody listening, please like, follow, and subscribe our show to help us grow the show and continue to have unbelievable guests like Corné Krige. Thank you, guys. Ciao,
Thanks,
ciao.
Ben. Thanks, Gurthro.
Cheers, G. Cheers, Corné. Thank you.